this life on your zone every day.
You didn't have to cut me off. Think I like it never happened, that we were nothing. I don't even need your love, but you treat me like a stranger and I feel so loved. No, you didn't have to stoop so low. Have your friends collect your records and then change your number. I guess that I don't need that though. Now you're just somebody that I used to know. Now you're just somebody that I used to know. Now you're just somebody that I used to know.
Woo! What is going on, you guys? It is Dollar Cost Crypto here with why the BRICS failed at world domination, man. And that is fucking facts. Pepe Saturdays, that's right, man. Triple intro, Dustin Olson. What is up, G? Let's go, man. Fallout Zone in the building, man. What's going on, man? Still live from Puerto Rico. Hot Rollins being the first one in the stream. Shout out to our boy Hot Rollins. Second by Brian, man. What's up, G? And, hey. Not bad, man. John Favell, I ain't missing one, nor do you want to miss this one, dude. This one's going to be a really fun one. I'm reacting to why the BRICS failed at world domination. This is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, basically, right? And I hear this shit all the time. I hear this a lot from the there's this big like sort of circle jerk happening in the crypto space with the XRP guys. They're like, we're going to circumvent XRP is going to be the financial system where everyone transacts money in the BRICS system. We're going to supersede the dollar. And I'm like, bitch, get the fuck out of here with that fucking trash. That's fucking haram. I haven't heard such fucking bullshit come out of, I mean, it hurts my fucking head to even hear this fucking bullshit. I've had these thoughts for quite a long time. And then here comes this YouTube channel that I'm gonna show you about right now in a minute. What's if does a great video on it, and I'm like, damn, dude, like this is right up my fucking alley, man. This is what I've been feeling for a long time. Like these are these fucking narratives they push out, right? Just like the Japanese were gonna take over the fucking world in the 80s. Oh my god, now it's China. Oh no, the BRICS. What's the next one gonna be? Get the hell out of here. But beautiful, man. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Just for 2 seconds, just because this is a crypto channel, I'm going to just look at quickly at the prices in the crypto space, and we'll go on from here, man. Bitcoin's at $22,000, $1,500 Ethereum, not bad. 1569, that's nice. That should be 69 as well. That'd be funny as fuck. XRP down. Let's see where Hex is down about a penny right now. A lot of people are crying about that right now, but it just is what it is. We're probably going to stay in the 6 range for a minute. If you're lucky, you can buy Hex again, probably at like between the range of. I'd be shocked if it goes down to 5.6, but that's the range. 5.6 to 5.8 would be like, oh my god, yay, it's down. But I would definitely be kind of dollar cost averaging in that zone right there, or at least the low sixes. But it's a sort of thing like, yeah, if you haven't gotten your bags, get your bags. We will we'll be getting we'll be getting quite a few we'll be getting quite a few events in the hex ecosystem pretty soon and stuff like that. I don't think V3 is very far away. We should have it. I truly believe before March 15th, but could be sometime in late March. But honestly, like my original prediction on this was kind of like late February and stuff like that. But obviously we're in March already, so I'm a little off on that already. But it just is what it is, though. But Richard's kind of back in full swing of things, kind of just talking more about development and kind of not doing the whole Hex Flex thing anymore. Though Hex Pump's big enough, we might go back to Hex Flex. So shout out to that, man. But I am personally thinking about doing this maybe every Saturday, having a reaction video Saturday or something like that. Or I'll come up with some better name for it. If you guys got a cooler name for it, help me out. But React Saturdays is kind of what I'm thinking about right now, or Reaction Saturdays being something that I kind of react to in kind of the financial or demographic space, or just some overall interesting stuff. I've also thought about reacting to some troll videos, which would be really fucking funny. But yeah, man, it's really cool. In terms of like where I think maybe Hex could pump to in terms of the price and everything like that. If V3, let's just say, was announced this week or next week or whatever, or this month, we'd hit sort of a range between probably like 9 to like 11 cents being kind of the top of it. There's a lot of sell orders at 10 cents and 9 cents, and you wouldn't really need a big push for that stuff. But regardless or not, I think there's enough money there that it could actually push us past like that zone. Dare I say 12 cents, but just kind of is what it is. But it's kind of good for people to see like, oh wow, this coin's alive. Oh my god. It's kind of nice. Now we did crypto and the rest of the market did dump down a little bit, right? So we kind of held up for about a day or two longer than the rest of the market, but the rest of the market finally kind of clawed us down. And this is probably has to do with a lot of people in Hex. The longer and longer you're in crypto, you end up eventually getting bags and other stuff. So people are down on this. So they probably took profits on some of their Hex to just go buy their altcoin bags. This is just a guesstimate. I'm guessing, man. And Shock 99, man. I hope it's not too late to start DCing. It's not, man. As long as you are buying below 10 cents, I think you're locking in a lot of multiples, but kind of like the final DCA should be done between 18 to 21 cents. But right now you are at 6.5 cents. Fucking winning, bros. Winning. Your guys are here early right now. The game changes a little bit. Once Hex is above 21 cents, then we're kind of in a game where like you're in it for a quick flip versus like a longer term sort of thing until Hex does have another 80% correction, and then you can make your long-term investment in it. But that's the way I would play it, man. Me too, bro. Me too. But America has to have some blockchain, right? One day, man. Shit, if they allow us to build a blockchain, I'll probably build I'll build an American blockchain at some point and stuff like that. Once I won't get put in handcuffs for it. But because I love to build something here for the States. But yeah. But without further ado, man, let's get into our video, man. This is kind of an explanation video why the BRICS or total dog shit. And again, this is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I think probably the one with the best chance of really doing something in the future, I think, is India. It's just there's just a lot of just stuff going on in that country and a lot of poverty. It's sad, but a lot of these countries are pretty boned, basically. Maybe Brazil can pull it together if they end up fully aligning with the United States at some point, but yeah, there's just demographically all these countries except for like India is pretty in the shitter, man. Damn, it's not great. Pretty confident about 21 cents. Oh yeah. That's one hell of a mix, man. Stream Saturdays during the UFC events called DC and UFC. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I'm starting to get a lot of just living in Vegas. I'm starting to get quite a lot of buddies in the UFC that are actively fighting in the UFC now. Shout out to my boy O'Day, and the Monkey King, and a bunch of these other guys as well. But yeah, it's maybe at some point and stuff like that. Maybe I do it on Rumble or something. But we'll have to kind of check it out. But without further ado, you guys, let's get into the old video. Boom.
Around 15 years ago, people thought the BRICS, or Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, were rising to rule the world, displacing the old Western powers as exemplified by the United States, European Union, and all that. This was treated just as a fact of the world that denying would make you an idiot. As of this video's production in 2023, with a partial exception, all of these countries have failed in one way or another.
My boy already coming in with that heat. I mean, obviously, we don't got to tell you why. Like, these countries are all doing pretty terrible. India is probably the one that's probably doing the best out of the five here, but obviously Brazil is doing pretty bad because of the price of commodities. Russia, I mean, dude, the demographics alone and the whole Russia's case, I mean, it's pretty bad. They don't have a replacement. They don't have a replacement for the next generation. They're pretty much their population is going to go down something like 30 to 50% in the next 20 years. Not great. Plus the Ukraine war, they're losing pretty terribly, but we'll see what happens there. China, same thing. Out of all these countries, demographically, China is the most effed right now. Pretty much, we're going to see a 50% collapse in their entire population within the next 30, 40 years. They're kind of the oldest. They have the oldest demographic out of the developing nations, or I guess I would call it I guess let's call it developing nation. And then South Africa is just riddled with bad government, racism, class. It's bad. And the same thing, the demographics aren't that great on the I guess the ruling class over there. Yeah, but hey, but that's just is what it is, man. And on top of that, too, that Dustin Olson, India and China hating each other. Surprisingly, they joined together. It's a really weird thing where like they're trading with each other, but then on the borders between the Himalayas, they're like actively killing each other, which is insane. Like, I think the other day, the Chinese guard or whatever was like beat a bunch of like Indian soldiers to death. They bludgeoned them to death. Like, bro, what? Like, that is insane. But then they still have to trade with each other. It's this weird relationship where like these are massive countries, have a tremendously large populations, 1 billion apiece, and kind of feels like they don't care about human life as much. Now, can't talk too much shit. Every country, sacrifices the civilian class. I mean, let's just be for real. That happens, but it's pretty messed up, if I'm being honest.
A majority are in horrifying recessions right now, some the worst in their historic record. A majority are also slated for mass famine, massive population decline, and state collapse. Meanwhile, the United States sits on top of it all, with economic and population growth outstripping all of them, with continued cultural, economic, political, military, and technological predominance that barely wavered.
Woo, 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 woo. I gotta go Pepe for that, man. Sheesh, America. And just to clarify, my G, man, Russia is losing. Your brainwash, bro. No, they are losing. They're losing a lot of troops. They've lost a lot of. I mean, it doesn't mean that they've lost the war or anything like that. They actually could turn it around in the summertime and stuff. So, but my G, bro, you're not over there fighting the fight and stuff. You don't know. It just is what it is. But regardless or not, a war being so close to your front and stuff is pretty costly and stuff. And the good thing is that there isn't that much. There has been a lot of attack on their infrastructure as well. So not great. It's not great for either side, honestly. But the West is funding that war. I mean, honestly, I'm not with all that shit for funding the Ukraine personally, but they're mostly doing it essentially to disarm Russia. But it just is what it is, I guess. But shout out to our boys in the United States. Obviously, I'm American and stuff like that. But I don't know. There's just the amount of disrespect for the United States worldwide, especially like it's pretty insane, dude. Like I think people are fucking crazy, honestly. Like it's pretty insane, like how far advanced the United States is militarily around the world. That like, I mean, they're like, why is the United States policing the world and stuff like that? Well, because if we weren't, everyone would be fucking trying to kill each other. Legitimately. I mean, it's kind of this weird thing where like we're the best clean shirt, right? Not perfect, but the world hasn't seen this much peace without the United States being in control. And it just is what it is. I mean, all you got to do is pull out all the military out of the Middle East and they'll just fucking kill each other. Which isn't great either, if I'm being honest. But I mean, I don't wish for that shit. But it's kind of insane how retarded people are.
Economic and population growth outstripping all of them, with continued cultural, economic, political, military, and technological predominance that barely wavered. Wait, what the hell just happened? The story of the BRICS is such a strange rabbit hole. However, once you look into it, you see a picture of deliberate lies, misconstruals, and lost dreams that show how often our understandings of the world are guided by what various special interests want to believe, what the current luck of the moment is, and how devilishly hard it is to play the game of betting against God, that is, predicting the future. From the start, the BRICS were a bad investment made by people who wanted quick returns and didn't understand the value of long-term investing, simply looking for a quick buck. It takes time for an economy to grow, and businesses with a good model don't crop up overnight. And sometimes, even promising business models aren't enough. Last year, companies that have shaped the way a generation processes its daily lives lost trillions of dollars in value that took decades to build. At one point, these companies combined with the 14th largest economy in the world. So as they declined in value, so did the portfolios of nearly every major institution, hedge fund, and investing platform. But there is another way. There is a market whose prices outpaced the S&P 500 in 2022 when it appreciated on average 35%, the contemporary art market. And now you can access it in minutes. Paid every minute 50 you guys to see. The first reason for why the BRICS failed is that they never existed in the first place. Let me repeat that. The BRICS.
Now, he's about to come up with a really great point that this is kind of a bullshit sort of like fake relationship. It's mostly just done because they kind of meet once a year just to kind of resolve like trading disputes or something like that. But because they're such big trading partners, they kind of have to meet with each other. But most of these countries don't really like each other. And if a real war were to come out, they would be pretty much all against each other. Outside of maybe like one or two might have a little bit of an ally in themselves. Obviously, India and China kind of hate each other. Yeah. But just you know what? Just because I don't run away from any of this bullshit, just to say this right here, how can you say that when America's killed 1 million Iraqis alone? What about Syria, Afghanistan, Africa? And then I said the dirtiest shirt. It just is what it is. Like, I mean, honestly, like I did not believe, like, honestly, fucking all that 9/11 shit. Like, I'm pretty sure it was the fucking Saudis who did it, if I'm being honest. And we shouldn't have been in there anyway. Like, legitimately, like, absolutely not. Oh, well, I mean, maybe Desert Storm, that's fine and stuff because we're protecting the Kuwaitis or whatever. But like, this whole Iraq invasion, Afghanistan invasion was a crock of shit. I do not support that at all, but it happened, and it also happened when I was, I was a kid growing up. So I'm not with on any of that shit. I think that's bullshit. But regardless or not, like, if you end up having entire nations at war, you will have more than a few million. I promise you that.
Have never been a thing. That's a bit harsh, though. These countries do meet up once a year to discuss their shared interests and what they're working on right now. However, it's not at all comparable to organizations like NATO, the European Union, and the like, which often work like transnational empires, in many cases since they're extensions of the American empire and are part of Western civilization. Watching the Europeans cope about me saying that in the comments is gonna be so much fun. However, the thing that lots of people overvalue or do not understand about diplomacy outside the Pax Americana, or countries that are tied to the US's political and cultural power, is that diplomacy is inherently multi-sided, and an alliance, talks, or anything like that does not mean very much in of itself. Let's just look at India and China's relationship as a single example. India and China are both part of the BRICS, being the I and the C, And India is also part of China's what really amounts to colonial project of the Belt and Road Scheme. India also commonly buys military equipment from China's ally Russia, and the two could be considered allies. From all this, you would suspect that China and India would be strong allies, right? However, the reality
Yo, India's comb over was incredible, man. That's an incredible comb over.
all this you would suspect
Sheesh. But basically, these two, you would think with these two countries, with the size and population they have, these fuckers should not be fighting with each other at all. Should be fully allied and should have a trading partnership the same size as the trading relationship we have with, Canada and China and Canada and Mexico. And honestly, because of their inner fighting and stuff, this has been a big detriment to their economies. And honestly, this is pretty fucking stupid. Honestly, if geopolitically and stuff, if they really wanted to kind of try to conquer the world or do that, like they would do it together, but they don't. So, oof.
that China and India would be strong allies, right? However, the reality is that these countries have threatened war with each other several times in the last few years, with skirmishes between them in the Himalayas killing hundreds of people. China is trying to dam up India's water supply in the Himalaya mountains, and both are actively cultivating alliances, navies, and foreign policies against the other country, and by all accounts despise each other. However, in these separate organizations, they can pretend to be buddies. This degree of complexity of working with several different partners at once is common in the second and third worlds, since it geopolitically makes sense. People often say a country
Whew, this is gonna be a long video, you guys. I'm gonna pause a lot right here. Look at all these people. But Unsuitable came up with a great question right here. U.S. based China manufacturing is slowly moving to India. Yeah, Bangladesh, India, Mexico, and Canada as well. I mean, we're getting a lot of the manufacturing going to Mexico actually as well. But yeah, we've been rugging the Chinese U.S. manufacturing since 2016. Some say 2015, but 2016 legitimately under Trump, and this has caused a lot of problems for China, access to dollars, and this is why you ended up having China going into Hong Kong in order to get access to whatever dollars that Hong Kong had, because they were desperately in need of dollars for international trade and buying things. From there, this is why they've also just recently in Hong Kong they're going to allow listings of cryptocurrencies and all this other stuff, because they need another active. They need to turn these active markets on in order to get access to dollars, basically, because all these countries' currencies are total fucking trash outside of their own countries. No one trusts them for international trade, so they're forced to go into the market to go get dollars. But because the China-America relationship has soured so badly, they are pretty much having a lot of trouble getting access to those dollars now that the U.S. factories are slowly trying to move out of China, and this is causing a big cash crunch in the country. So this is why you're getting a lot of Chinese investments into other places and stuff, trying to get access to those currencies, to sell those currencies off in order to get dollars. This is why we're having not the U.S. dollar, even though we have large inflation here in the United States, the inflation is much worse in other countries because of the weakness of basically some of the biggest players not be able to get dollars and stuff. So you have other countries selling off other countries' currencies reserves in the open market in order to get dollars, and then other countries also as well printing their own currency in order to get more U.S. dollars. And there's also this another incentive as well, is that other countries, because of the global system of trade, they need to print more of their currency out in the market for it to be weaker against the dollar in order to facilitate more international trade. So it's just a big fucking like clusterfuck of just other countries. If the dollar is strong relative to their currencies, other currencies just start printing like crazy in order to bolster up their international trade and stuff. So it's just a crazy situation that we're in right now. Kind of insane, man. But yeah, man. Let's see. DCC, how long has China been trading with Mexico? I was on vacation in Oaxaca and saw a bunch of motorcycle taxis, 3 wheels that had an Indian labels. There's always international trade no matter what and stuff like that. But like a lot of the Chinese trade is kind of cartel based and stuff like that. A lot of those horrible fentanyl drugs and crap like that gets into the country is because the Chinese are essentially doing a reverse of the opium war on the United States and trying to bring fentanyl and a bunch of these kind of hard drugs into the States and other countries they want to kind of weaken as well. But you do have some investment in this place, but the United States is tentacles are pretty far reaching even in Mexico and stuff, obviously because the biggest trading partner, but you still get some investment in some stuff from foreign countries and stuff. So that's not going to go away. It's kind of crazy. And that's right, man. And that is right, man. 102 live viewers and 39 likes. Like the video, you guys. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll keep going, man.
Country like Thailand, Turkey, the Philippines, or Brazil have made a decisive turn towards Russia, China, or America. But like a girl with many suitors, they're incentivized to play off different countries in order to get as many goodies as possible as they compete for influence. Erdogan and Turkey would rotate between Russian, European, Chinese, and American influence, as well as other factions in the Middle East, depending on Turkey's needs at that very moment. You can see a similar thing in Pakistan, where on paper, Pakistan is a strong US ally. However, in real terms, Pakistan is receiving massive amounts of funding from China, which has announced an Iron Brotherhood, and America does not trust Pakistan at all. This shows how the BRICS could exist on paper theoretically, but actually have no impact on the ground. Let's just run through what relationships each of the countries in the BRICS have to each other to show how unreal it is. Brazil is largely an American ally. It's not especially a strong one, but it's still there. Brazil doesn't have lots of foreign entanglements and is largely self-contained, but used to trade a tremendous amount of its natural resources to the Chinese market. Thus, it served for Brazilians to respect China. Russia is in an alliance with China, although one rife with massive mistrust, and the Chinese Communist Party has a significant faction that wants to annex Siberia, and both know it's a relationship of convenience against the Americans.
That is crazy. I didn't know there was a whole Chinese thing to annex Siberia. What the fuck? I actually didn't. I've never heard of that. That's insane, dude. Holy crap. Oh my God, man. That is funny. But damn, that is insane actually to think about that. But China also has Mongolia sort of as a puppet state. And so there's this weird sort of thing where, like, if you actually look here on the map, Russia and China have kind of pump money into Mongolia and stuff like that in order to kind of keep it as a buffer state between the two countries. Even though they're frenemies and stuff, they kind of like having a buffer state between them anyway, regardless. That is crazy that they're trying to get Siberia, man. What the hell, man? The more you know, man. Sheesh. Let me go back on that. That's crazy.
Massive mistrust, and the Chinese Communist Party has a significant faction that wants to annex Siberia, and both know it's a relationship of convenience against the Americans. You can see the weakness in that China has not supported Russia's invasion of Ukraine at all. Russia and India are weak allies, but that gets trumped by India's top ally being the Americans, who are Russia's biggest enemy. As said before, India and China despise each other. South Africa, meanwhile, is geopolitically a non-entity, as we'll explain later. South Africa has taken some money from the Chinese, like most of Africa, but to say they're actually a strong ally would be going way too far. From all this, the idea of the BRICS as a shared coalition in any way like NATO or how the Warsaw Pact used to be is completely ridiculous. Let me explain to you how the idea of the BRICS started. It was when the chairman of Goldman Sachs encouraged it in 2001 as a way to promote investment.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, fucking Goldman Sachs. God damn it. Jesus Christ. Of course it had to be Goldman Sachs. It had to be it's always Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, or the fucking CIA. Jesus. So so basically Goldman Sachs kind of pushed this whole thing around in order for them to drum up more capital from, I guess, just investment all over the world in order to kind of fund these kind of these trades and stuff, because commodity prices were going to be pretty decently high, so they'd be able to make a lot more money. Crazy, dude.
Let me explain to you how the idea of the BRICS started. It was when the chairman of Goldman Sachs encouraged it in 2001 as a way to promote investment in those countries, which people would hopefully do through Goldman Sachs. Like a couple other things, it was an advertising scheme that went way too well. The idea of the BRICS and their rise to global success was pushed by 3 separate interest groups that benefited from the idea, and there was no group that pushed against it, so it just became conventional knowledge. The first group, as alluded to before, is financial types. The early 2000s were the era of the most capital or cheap money for investment in all of human history. This was since it was a time with the highest percentage of middle-aged people ever and wide-scale wealth. Middle-aged people invest in the stock market to save up for retirement, thus resulting in the stock market growing to a truly massive percentage of the world's economy.
Now, he just said something really cool about demographics and stuff, and basically saying that once people hit around the age of about 40 to 45, this is the you're supposed to start investing for your retirement at a much younger age, but most of us don't for the most part. Obviously, we do and stuff. We're in the cryptocurrency space. We're investors. This is the 117 people live watching right now. We are kind of like tip of the spear when it comes to financial literacy, as well as really putting money into a really specific space in the we're investors basically, right? Most people are not fucking investors at all, right? But the typical person, but we are not, we're the exception, not the rule, right? The average person really doesn't get to, I mean, it makes sense too why people at 45 or and stuff start really saving for retirement is because one, their body's starting to hurt no matter what you do, whether you work in an office or in the trades outside. And what you end up doing is you end up feeling like, oh crap, I'm getting old. I can't do this forever. And then you really put some money away. Also around 45, a lot of people really start earning the most money they've ever earned in their whole life and stuff like that. Usually they get that last promotion. Maybe it's their last promotion to get, or maybe the second to last promotion. And they really start earning a lot of money. They start getting paid for consultations or things like that. They become kind of leaders in their industry. And they really start earning a lot of capital. And they finally have the capital to start investing for the future. This is why when I think me and Charlie calculated it correctly. I think it was like 2034 is when the average millennial is going to be about 45 years old. And at this age bracket right here, we're probably going to see interest rates go back down to close to zero again, and we're going to have a nice 15 to 20-year bull market. And it makes if you look at it that way, it looks a lot of sense. It's the same thing. Why from I think it was 80. I'm trying to remember the year, but I think it was 83 to like 2006. We had this massive bull market, and that was mostly led off of the boomers essentially getting into that 45-year range and stuff like that, and them joining that class, and then another 10-year bull market in the space as well, just from all of them being to that age where like they needed to put as much money as possible, so the system was flush with cash. Right now we're getting over, I think somewhere between 8 to 10,000 baby boomers retiring every single day. And that capital is kind of leaving equities and stuff like that and kind of going into more safer investments. Some of them are just leaving the stock market, but like withdrawing. So no longer like depositors anymore into the market and stuff. So it's really interesting what's going on in the world right now in terms of that. So we're going to have a nice bull market in the middle of the 2030s, which is really cool. That'll pretty much last until like basically 2050. Pretty insane, dudes. Which is really kind of cool. So, and it's almost like we're getting history repeat itself economically, but not like war. I really hope not war wise, because, the last time this happened around and stuff, what got us out of the war, what got us out of like the depression was basically war. This time around, hopefully we don't have that. And it's more of just, we're having this big bull market into the 1950s. And then from there, we have another 20 more years of just a nice bull market before we have a restructuring up to the next generations and stuff. So pretty cool, man. Did I hear you cut, or did I hear you say 15-year bull market? Yeah. So we should be we're going to have probably some lull time. Kind of what we're seeing right now. I mean, if the cycles kind of repeat themselves and we get the regular 4-year cycles that we've been getting in crypto, this cycle should end sometime in 2025. The rest of 25 is a wash, and then 26 is bullshit as well. And then we end up having another 3-year bull run for 27, 28, 29, and then we crash. And basically, I think we hit somewhere between a 3 to 4 year bear market, basically. So if it all lines up perfectly, we're kind of repeating our version of like we're kind of repeating our version of I would call it like the roaring 20s for crypto and stuff, in terms of crypto and stuff. But now other industries, I don't know, but in crypto wise, like we're having a roaring 20s, and the big recovery for the rest of the markets is basically going to start either in 2033 or 2034 if we're just strictly going off of like demographics. So pretty insane. Let me go back a little bit.
Wide-scale wealth. Middle-aged people invest in the stock market to save up for retirement, thus resulting in the stock market growing to a truly massive percentage of the world's economy over the last 30 years, and money funding insane projects. Since there was so much capital in developed economies, it flooded outwards to look for returns in developing countries, since there was more of an ability to take risks. The financiers involved wanted the BRICS to succeed, since many had invested in those countries, and thus their success would generate large amounts of money for them as individuals. There was a lot.
Now, I want to answer this question right here. He who wants a gold makes the rules. Remember, China alone has 20 tons of gold. Last time, gold doesn't matter anymore. Now, by me saying that, a lot of people are going to be that's fucking haram. But basically, our generation doesn't really respect gold anymore. Neither does the Xers. Neither does the Zoomers, the Millennials, and more than likely Generation Alpha for the most part. It's all faith-based. It's all faith-based currencies at this point, and your currency is pretty much backed by your military. And I know that's not what a lot of like these kind of gold bugs and silver bugs want to hear. There's no way in fucking hell we're ever going to go back to a gold. And I'm not even saying like I'm pipe dreaming like one day it's all going to be crypto, bros. Crypto for. No, I'm not even saying that, but I'm telling you like that we ain't going back to a gold standard. And it's like I'm honestly like, yeah, I wish we never went on that. But if you think about it, right, we really weren't even like in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard. Like we were not really even on a gold, like the banks were on a gold standard. Regular people were not on a gold standard since like, was it? I think we were officially really off the gold standard, I think in 1931 or 1934, when then they started the confiscation of gold. So we had been off the gold standard for 40 fucking years. If you actually, it's kind of insane. Like we were kind of in a fake gold standard for 40 years, and then they officially took us off the gold standard at that point as well. And I really feel like, dude, like I ain't gonna lie, bro. I fell for the whole gold and silver bullshit, hook, line, and sinker too, bro. Like I was a young kid. I stacked gold. I stacked my gold. Do I still have it? Yeah, but like, it's, bro. The gains are the gains, bro. The gains are bad. Like this is the kind of crazy shit I would hear in the gold and silver market. So like one day, one silver gold, what was it? They were like, you're gonna use gold to buy property and slaves. And then you're going to use silver to, pay for your regular stuff or whatever, right? And then eventually it got so crazy, like, no, forget gold. Silver's actually the rarer metal, and silver one day is going to be rarer than gold. You understand, man? 1 ounce of silver is going to be able to buy you a property, 40 acres and a mule for 1 ounce of silver. You're going to see stacked silver, boys and ladies and gentlemen. Bro, the copium is insane.
You didn't have to cut me off. Think I like it never happened, that we were nothing. I don't even need your love, but you treat me like a stranger, and I feel so loved. No, you didn't have to stoop so low. Have your friends collect your records and then change your number. I guess that I don't need that though. Now you're just somebody that I used to know. Now you're just somebody that I used to know. Now you're just somebody that I used to know.
Now, Crypto King, I'm not shitting on this right here. I'm actually looking to buy a silver mine. That's a business generating you income versus speculation, really. You are buying a business in order to extract those materials to sell in the open market, and then you will create a profit, hopefully. And over time, I do believe the silver's price and the gold price will probably trend a little up, but it's not going to go massive unless we get a huge collapse in the economy or something like that. But even then, right, with silver, hopefully silver can reach back to 30, its all-time high of 30. I mean, hopefully we can get to $100 silver one day, and we can hit $10,000 for gold, and that'd be awesome. But you're investing into a picks and shovels business versus you're rampantly speculating on the price. Now, in the crypto space, we have a large amount of volatility, so we can actually speculate in the price. And also, we're growing faster than cell phone usage right now. We are growing faster than the spread of the internet and the spread of cell phones. Sheesh. Approximately 1 kilogram of silver in each EV car. Beautiful, bro. Dude, I'm rooting for dude. I look deep down. I want everyone to. I want people to win, dude. But let me tell you this: if I had stayed investing in silver since I did in 20, like I started investing in silver and gold in 2010, and I kept buying until 2013, and then I haven't bought a single ounce since. And it was probably one of the best financial decisions I've ever done in my life. Because then I took my capital, I sold a little bit of my silver and gold, used that capital, and then my dollar cost averaging, and trust me, it wasn't a lot of money, to then get into stocks, made more money investing in buying in single stocks and stuff like that. Then from there, rolled that shit into crypto, and it's completely changed my life. But, I hope you're right. That's my little rant on silver and gold.
The financiers involved wanted the BRICS to succeed since many had invested in those countries, and thus their success would generate large amounts of money for them as individuals. There was a lot of thinking in financial circles at the time that went like, if I can sell a washing machine to every family in China or India, I will be the richest man in the world, not realizing some Chinese or Indian guy would pirate your design and sell it in his home country better and more cheaply than you can. In all fairness, to a really big degree, this did pan out. The years between 1980 and 2020 were those of the fastest economic growth and reduction in poverty in the whole world by a really massive margin, concentrated significantly in the developing world. However, as this video will show, this did not pan out in the ways that the people expected for a variety of reasons. The second group that this was pushed by was self-hating Western academics. A significant part, if not a majority, of the West ruling class is self-loathing, and bases its right to power off the West being fundamentally broken. The idea of the global South, as they call it, catching up and surpassing the developed world, is greeted with applause in academia and much of the media and bureaucracy as a just revenge for colonialism, even though that entails their societies losing. You didn't see many people writing in academia about the West's inherent cultural and systemic advantages in the early 2000s, while you saw lots of inflating of the value and
This is really true. There's this self-hating in countries and stuff as they become developed, where they're like fanficking over like, oh my god, this other country's gonna cuck me out, steal our women, and all this other, like, it is like, it's pretty cringy actually, like what ends up happening, and it's usually these high class, it's just these losers. I mean, a lot of them are losers, not everyone, but like a lot of them, these high intellectual types that spend their entire lives in school, not doing anything in the real world, and just kind of playing these kind of like masturbation games over how their country's going to fail and this other country's going to like do better and whatever and stuff. But it's pretty bad. Like, I don't like this shit. There's this whole crap, like, where everyone's shitting on the United. Like, I am for the United States through and through, American, red-blooded, corn-fed, hot Cheeto-fed, no, corn-fed American. Even though I'm a beaner. Corn-fed American, Hexagon, 555, staked out, ladies and gentlemen, sacked for all the sacks, but still in all these other shit coins. Shout out to my boys in Phantom and Optimism. But this is the truth, man. A lot of elites hate their own country and fellow man. It's true. I don't know why this is the way it is, but it's pretty sad. And then also there's this whole thing too of like, that there's this big masturbation sort of, as well as like, not I'm not shitting on passport bros or doing any of that stuff and everything like that. You find yourself a good woman, but there's this whole thing too of like, oh, American women are trash and this and stuff. Like, man, the rest of these women are heading down the same way as well, man. What are we talking about? Like, yeah. And corn came from Mexico. It did, sir. Man, dude. It's no, I just don't have my mic on me, man. I'm traveling. Dog Cost Crypto, put the Twinkies down, bro. We can hear you breathing over there. No, I'm drinking the Celsius, ladies and gentlemen. Rectican. Bro, I'm down in weight right now. I've been working out this whole fucking time, dude. I'm down in Puerto Rico, man. Shit, man. The other day, man, I literally slept a day and like 3/4. I don't know how it's possible. I fell asleep and I woke up like damn near 2 days later. I'm like, what the fuck happened? I just like time traveled. But definitely, man. But there's just this kind of a, let me see if I can show me. There we go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's this kind of this inner hate that people have for their own countries and their people and stuff, and then and a lot of it has to do with maybe not having success in it or something. Because you got to think about, like, these high intellectuals, they just spend their entire fucking lives in academia. They're fucking losers. They can't get fucking laid. They're not doing well in life. They have other people who go into business that are being more successful than them, and they're like, oh man, these dumb fucks and stuff, these dudes with 120 IQ and stuff, how come they have better lives than women and stuff? I'm over here, master race, 145 IQ, 160 IQ. I should be having, and it's always about women and bitches and shit. I swear to God, dude. It's always about, it's in the people pushing this shit are these fucking technocrats and the highest level of this entire the academics pushing this dumb shit. It's so stupid. Yeah, and 150K in debt, definitely, man.
Strengths of developing nations, thus creating a skewed intellectual view. Today, the internet in a lot of ways has replaced academia as a center for new intellectual thought for most people, but that really wasn't the case at the time, with academia holding a monopoly on most thinking. The third group being the developing world's elites themselves, which pretty obviously benefited from the belief in being a strong, successful, unified front rising against the established order. Leaders in China, Russia, Brazil, and the rest stood to gain massively from beating their chests about being the wave of the future. Another thing to consider is that all of these societies are more collectivist, shame-driven, and less open than Western ones, meaning they will downplay their weaknesses and overplay their strengths in the public view, while the Western world does the exact opposite. In the developing world since the start of the 20th century, there's been this push to try to form ludicrous alliances against the developed world of extremely disparate countries on paper that actually have no power or coherency. A great example of this is the Japanese co-prosperity sphere, where the Japanese said they were working for all Asians while actually trying to build an empire that would allow them to exploit other Asians. Mao Zedong...
Don't let Charlie hear that. No, all jokes aside. But yeah, man, this is what countries do when they get into power and stuff. They try, I mean, they put their influence, and then over time, like, if depending on the whole, every country does dirt. Every country does dirt. Some do more dirt than others when they have the ability. It's sort of, it's almost like it's almost like the nerd get, like the uncool nerd getting the power and stuff. Is like, yeah, I'm gonna make all these fucking people pay and stuff, and they end up going. It really is like this sort of like social consciousness or whatever of just like how they act, and it's very strange. But even a good country, you would go to Japan and it's a great country, and they've done some fucking absolutely terrible things to the Chinese. Like the Japanese have done terrible things. You look up, I think it was a unit 143 or some shit. Like they were doing like these experimental things on like people in Manchuria. Terrible, disgusting things they were doing and stuff. I mean, oh my God. And then like the rape of Nanking, and like not the rape of Nanking, I'm so sorry. There's this other, basically in Manchuria and stuff. They were basically the Japanese soldiers that were having trouble keeping control of them. So the way they did it is they would set up these camps ahead of time and tell the Japanese soldiers the next like rape camp would be, this is real, by the way. The rape camp is like 5 miles that way. Just kill everyone in your way and stuff, and you get to go to the rape camp. Bro. Thank you so much, Claus. I appreciate it. Yeah, Unit 731 and stuff. And then not to speak of like what they did to like a dude. It's and this is everything. The Germans, the Russians. I mean, like, bro, this happens every time with conquering nations. Like you have horrible atrocities, and the same thing too. You put let's just say you put Afghanistan in control. They would have done horrible things, and they have done horrible things in the past. If you go far enough and stuff when they were in control, like it's almost like every country had their heyday where they got to be in control and just did massively terrible things and stuff like that. So I'm in no way I'm apologizing for the United States for what they did to get into power and stuff like that. But if you actually look at it, it's not as bad as other countries. But regardless or not, if you had a lot of other countries in the United States position, they'd be doing some fucking horrible things. And that's facts right there. That deserves a fucking Pepe for that. And this is my last negative thing, maybe on Japan right here and stuff like that. Like a lot of people are like, shouting out the Japanese woman and stuff like that. It's like they're subservient, they're this and this and this. But then I've also heard the negative side of this from a lot of people, where they're willing just to put up a shit if you're making, like, they're very, like, I don't know. I've heard a lot of the cases on both sides and stuff like that, and it's not as picture perfect as you really think and stuff like that, no matter what. So, yeah.
No power or coherency. A great example of this is the Japanese co-prosperity sphere, where the Japanese said they were working for all Asians while actually trying to build an empire that would allow them to exploit other Asians. Mao Zedong invented the term third world, actually, and sent money and experts all over the world to try to build an alliance against the Soviets or Americans. Other examples are Pan-Africanism, Third World Socialism, Pan-Arabism, and more. When you get a meeting with Indonesia, Libya, Angola, and Brazil into the same room, they're not going to accomplish anything except boosting egos. Most former colonial countries have psychological pathologies that stem from originally being proud countries, and in many cases viewing themselves as the center of the world. While afterward, the Europeans smashed their entire worldview, while in many cases also providing democracy, rule of law, science, modern militaries, and the sort. The complicated feelings of inferiority means that lots of these countries pose more than they really need to as an overcompensation for colonialism. Lots of these countries also have strong ideas of face as well, viewing putting up a good exterior to the outside world as a moral good in of itself. All of this added together creates a series of special interests that were able to push the idea of the BRICS without much reality behind it. The BRICS started meeting up, and journalists herald their rise to dominance at the expense of the Western world. The funny thing is that I'm 21, and a big part of my audience is even younger than I am, and partially since both of my parents are really into politics, but even I as a 10-year-old remember how big the hype was. I remember walking around Philly as a 13-year-old thinking about how America was doomed to obscurity, while China would replace us, and it was the duty of me and my generation to prevent that. I remember hearing in school the truism that America was in decline, which was just treated as obviously true, and the second and third worlds would gradually replace it.
Yeah, and let me say one more thing too, and stuff like that. There's this whole thing that's saying like, oh, America's in decline. The whole fucking rest of the world's in decline. Everything's in decline. I mean, if the United let me tell you this, if the United States went down, bros, I promise you, we'd enter another world war. Without a fact. I mean, basically, whether like we either Gulf of Tonkin this shit, or like I mean, it's really sad to say, but one of the best ways to get yourself out of a fucking economic funk is to start a war, a really big one. And I think it would be really stupid, but it's sadly, it's, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Paul has a sadly first and second world map just shows Cuba's second world, not even close. No, this is according to Mao. So Mao kind of put it as like the sphere of influence that they could possibly control. Then they had Russia. That's why Cuba was red, because Russia controlled Cuba. And then you had the first world nations, which were, the United States and then the Europeans, basically. So he kind of came up with the whole term in order to split up the world in terms of like where their sphere of influence was. And obviously, especially during that time, no way China had any sphere of influence on fucking Africa at all. But it just kind of is what it is there. But yeah, with this whole thing with war and stuff like that, let's just say, like, I was thinking really negative, and let's just say we were just crashing and shit. What would happen is either someone else would start the war, or the United States would just instigate the war, just being for real about it, and then everyone would, that would force everything back together and stuff, and then hopefully we'd win, basically. And then it was kind of the same thing why the Ottomans, I think, were in the First World War and stuff like that. If they ended up being on the winning side, they would have their empire would have continued, but obviously they lost. And we're pretty much almost a drag on the Germans and shit. If you guys ever want to look into some history stuff, look up World War I Germans. Like, bro, that they were an incredible military and army. Incredible. Like what they were able to they were basically one country fighting everyone else by themselves, legitimately. Like the Ottoman Empire was basically, they were carrying a dead fucking corpse. It's kind of insane. But this is why I'm really bullish on crypto, because basically this is kind of like the exit plan for a lot of people, where they're kind of like exiting the old Ponzi's And I got a lot of shit for this actually on my YouTube shorts and stuff, where some people are saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about." Like this Ponzi shit that I'm talking about is pretty high level shit. Like people don't understand it. Like I don't truly mean it's all like really a Ponzi, but it's a great way to get around your head that it's kind of these ridiculous economic systems that aren't sustainable. But most things are not sustainable. Your life is not sustainable. You will die one day. Now, Ponzi is just a funny way to put it, but you know these are beautiful. These when they're working, they're awesome and they're wonderful, but they don't last forever, right? But it just kind of is what it is now. Yeah, but with the whole Mao thing and stuff, then eventually it just got turned to countries that were like really bad versus like they're coming out the badness, and then the first world nations basically. So that's kind of how it went. But any truth to China breaking apart the size of the CCP, apparently saying they have an inner ethics strife on? It's more than likely they probably will break apart. It just depends on what will take them down, basically. If there's a giant famine, that'll take it. That'll split the country up. Historically, China's always been like three to four countries usually. But just kind of is what it is. More than likely, the United States will probably back Hong Kong, obviously. But who knows, man? It's usually the like with the city states and stuff like that. It's usually the city states like Hong Kong and stuff like that. Any cities are along the coast or near the coast, and then from there you have like some inner kingdoms, and then those get conquered up. It's kind of insane, dude. Yeah, China.
Us and become our sugar daddies. Well, we lost all our vigor. I remember CNN's Fareed Zakaria, who is a great encapsulation of all three of the interest groups above of Western academia, money, and third world elites, in one, writing out how the rest would surely catch up. As a perfect example of the storm that never came, my school started teaching Mandarin as a foreign language when I was in middle school, and the year after I left high school, they replaced it with French. One of the things that people really ought to be very careful of is looking at information sources with a bias and then cherry-picking evidence for what their theory is already. To be brutally fair, literally everyone does this, and it's by all accounts impossible not to do with human nature. Then, when the exact opposite thing happens, everyone's flabbergasted. Think of a boy who's madly in love with a girl and so views the innocuous things she does as flirting, or how all the smartest people in the mid-20th century thought by 2000 everyone would be starving from overpopulation, but instead 2 billion people are obese, and the issue staring down the human race is mass depopulation. I'm going to go through each of the BRICS to explain why they failed, through which showing the nature of the modern geopolitical world. Let's have some fun. Number 1, Brazil. I'm part Canadian and I've lived there for a second, and there's an interesting time.
Shout out to Brazil, man. This is one of the number one destinations for all my passport bros out here, man. Brazilian women take care of their men, man. So I've heard, basically. But outside of the passport bros, their economy is pretty shaky and stuff like that, especially with commodity prices and stuff like that. When oil prices high, they do pretty well, as well as they're a big exporter of coffee and everything like that. And their farming is pretty intensive and stuff. They need a lot of fertilizer in order for them to farm. They can farm, but I learned this from who was it? Peter Zion. I learned this from Peter Zion that basically that their soil is so shitty that basically it's like beach sand. So when they're tearing down the rainforest, and once they uproot it, the ground underneath is just basically like sand, basically. So they need to fill it up with all these petrochemicals and stuff in order to actually get it to working and stuff, so they can actually have crops and stuff. It's pretty insane, dude.
Time in the 2010s when Canadians sat on a really high horse about having a better economy than America, saying this was due to their innate character and growing power as a nation. 10 years later, Canada is an authoritarian shit show where GDP per capita is less than 3/4 of the US. This is exactly what happened to Brazil, but worse. I'm always shocked that economics is by far the academic discipline our society puts the most effort into. You see far more economists as a percentage of public intellectuals compared to other eras of history than there ever really have been. However, since economics has become tied to power, the discipline of economics has not really been free to do good research and merely parrots what their paymasters want. This will be a consistent theme in this video. However, one big thing that always shocks me is that in the era when the BRICS were super big, no one looked at resource prices. Brazil is fundamentally a colonial economy, as all of Latin America is in general, and as Canada or Australia are as well. Brazil is an economically important country, but largely due to raw material exports. Brazil is blessed with raw resources, especially iron, tin, and phosphate, and fertile soil, being one of the world's greatest exporters of cereals, soy, sugar, tropical crops, as well as beef. East Asia and Europe are both inextricably linked with Brazil economically. In the early 2000s, China was experiencing the most rapid economic growth ever in the history of the world, and the largest driving sector of the Chinese economy was real estate, thus resulting in truly massive prices for raw materials due to the massive surge from the Chinese economy. The Chinese used the equivalent of the city of Rome's concrete every single year for a decade, and in that same decade used as much cement as the entirety of the US's whole history. The Chinese also moved up from being starving peasants to being a real market for food and especially meat. The Chinese responded to the 2008 financial crisis in the West by having a massive production and construction binge in order to stimulate their economy, which worked remarkably well.
So basically, what he's kind of alluding to, or he might be getting to, is basically that a lot of the growth that happened in Brazil is largely due to the huge construction boom and need of raw resources from China. Just China developing quite rapidly, and this is also one of the big booms that also happened for Australia as well, right? So I do believe he is right. He is right about all the stuff he's saying about raw resources and stuff, but I think it's a little off when it comes down to the agricultural side. They are large exporters and stuff like that, but not all the soil is that great and stuff. So they definitely do use a shit ton of like fertilizers in order to make that happen. So a disruption to any fertilizers and stuff could be a problem and stuff. But since we're over here on this side of the world in the Americas, it'll be a little bit easier for them to kind of grab it versus like you're on the other side of the world where it's not so easy to get fertilizers. But yeah, man. Boots on boots, a little off topic. Did you cover your thoughts on what will happen to the PHEX price upon launch? If you do, go watch it. I'm behind on your video. Yeah, I think I did mention a little bit in the Hex staking video and stuff. You want to check that out and stuff. But definitely, if you're in the Citadel, I will definitely answer the question for you and give you a nice response and stuff like that. For anyone who doesn't know and stuff, the Citadel is our one of our products and stuff that we end up doing. It is a chat group that we have for anyone that's in the Moon Gang and stuff like that. It's $100 a month. And here I can actually show you. I'm sorry. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. Yeah, you can leave your email address here and stuff so you can get all your information there. But obviously, join the Citadel. It's $100 a month. Basically, what it is, it's a Telegram chat where me and Charlie, you can get more direct access to me and Charlie. It's one of the two chats we heavily focus on. We give our attention pretty heavily to the Citadel as well as the current crypto mindset course. Every Monday, you get a newsletter that details stuff from current events as well as fundamental analysis, technical analysis, on-chain analytics. We also chart 10 to 5 cryptocurrencies that we think are very important at the time. News event on them as well, and then just memes on top of that. It's a really great service, as well as it's one of the better places for people to join up and stuff right before joining a course. Every month that you're in the Citadel, you get $50 off the next course. So it's this kind of cool thing where you can be in the Citadel for a couple months and stuff. Let's just say 6 months, you'll get $300 off the next course. And if you pay that course in crypto, you're getting another 15% off. So I mean, you're basically, if you're in the Citadel for 6 months, you're getting like $450 off the course and stuff. So it's a pretty good deal. So it kind of lowers the entry cost for someone to get into the crypto mindset course, as well as it's just a great place. We do a lot of flash webinars and we do a lot of recorded content and stuff. We're planning to do a lot more extra stuff for the Citadel. As the Citadel grows, more and more things are coming out for it. So I mean, it's an all around just great product. And we created it in order to actually be able to concentrate ourselves, because what ended up happening is that we ended up having I think we were somewhere at like 12 to 14 Telegram chats, and we wanted a place to kind of concentrate it in so we could focus more attention on it, just because it started getting a little like insane, but yeah. And back to the show.
With China completely missing out on that recession. This meant that resource-producing countries did unbelievably well in that era by feeding China. Due to this, Australia has not had a single recession in the last 40 years, and that's why Canada, for a bit, had a higher average income than the US. This applied to Brazil, which was flooded with immense wealth and hope. All of the resources Brazil exported were incredibly expensive. People often said Brazil was the country of the future and would gradually replace the US as a great economy. Wealthy Brazil.
That is some scary shit. Anytime they say your country is the country of the future, be fucking aware, dude. I just almost see that like them. It's like your country, this country is undefeatable and stuff like this. It's the next country. Then you already know it's fucked. 1000%. You hear that like, oh my god, like oh my god, it's like getting, oh man.
Brazilians would go to New York or Miami for insane shopping sprees. This sounds ridiculous today, but people genuinely believed it. A good proxy for countries that people overhype is where the Olympics or World Cup is held. Brazil had both in 2016 and 2014, respectively. However, by the time these came along, it all looked incredibly ironic. In 2014, the year it held the World Cup, Brazil's economy crashed to the worst rates ever in its historic record, which has largely held for the decade since. China was having an economic slowdown and was also transitioning away from early industrialization, which prioritizes mass construction, to try and later fail to transition to a more complex value-added economy. This crushed all the resource-based economies, including Brazil. Millions of Brazilians who had risen out of poverty into the global middle class horrifically slid back into it. At the same time, Brazilian President Lula, attached with 200 leading officials in government and private enterprise, circling around the Brazilian state oil company, was committing possibly the largest corruption case in the history of the whole world. Around $2 billion were stolen. Brazil then elected its own equivalent to Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, who was a right-wing demagogue promising to fix Brazil's economy and bring back the old days. In some ways, it's very reminiscent of the US, where there was a tight 2022 election between two very disliked candidates, while the political environment felt extremely tense. Brazilian friends have told me it feels like a civil war could happen. Like America, the left, led by old President Lula, who we talked about before, was narrowly able to gain power. I don't think there was really any excuse for overvaluing Brazil in the early 2000s, except for the interests of these three groups mentioned before. If someone had read any Latin American history, they could see the predicament Brazil was in. All Latin American countries except Mexico are all in a...
Yeah, so basically what he's talking about here is that a lot of the countries are kind of, I'm not saying like banana republics, but basically kind of like a lot of these countries, in order to really control them, they were kind of made into just to specify into one industry. That way they could end up doing like it kind of like you're mid-maxing your country in a way. And a lot of this was done purposefully, but they mid-maxed the country, and a lot of stuff they mid-max it is in commodities, right? Which is like sugar, coffee, tobacco, and stuff like that, iron, a lot of raw commodities. So when these commodity prices are really high, these countries do fantastically well, and then when it's not doing so hot anymore, they crash really badly. And it's kind of what he's been saying is just because Mexico has finally become one of these developed nations where they just don't rely on they're more of a value add versus I would call it like just strictly relying on commodity prices in order to fund their economy. But this has also been helped by the United States. Obviously, it's not just Mexico by itself, but just is to it is.
Affect colonial resource-dependent economies, and so they look really good when resource prices are high, and then completely collapse when resource prices do. You can literally project when Colombia is going to be a democracy based off what the price of coffee is. This is held for 150 years.
That is fucking funny, dude. The price of coffee, man. I always buy my Starbucks coffee. I got to warn Gammon right here, man. He's like, because everyone's so bullish on like one of the best places to invest right now is Medellin, Colombia, and it's a big crypto hotspot and stuff like that. But it's real lefty and not lefty, but it's a real nice place to live right now. And watch the fucking price of coffee collapses and shit, and then it goes all fucking like right wing. That'd be fucking hilarious.
When resource prices do, you can literally project when Colombia is going to be a democracy based off what the price of coffee is. This is held for 150 years. Latin America has been stuck in this trap for 300 years. Although Latin America has made some impressive gains, their percent of the world economy has remained constant over the last 100 years, and their relative wealth versus the US has remained constant for 200 years. Brazil has two separate systemic problems. The first, which I talk about in this video about Latin American civilization, is that due to its Iberian cultural heritage, there's naturally a large amount of corruption and inefficiency. And at the same time, their Latin aristocratic heritage treats working as dishonorable, while in Anglo countries, not working is considered disgusting. The second reason, and this is something that I've talked about in all sorts of previous episodes, is slavery is one of the worst things you can do in a society and is in effect a social cancer. And Brazil has practiced slavery in its history the most of almost any country in the world. And Brazil was fundamentally built upon slavery. And your average Brazilian is some mix of African ancestry, so it's difficult to remove Brazilian society from those roots. A final thing is that Brazil is one of the very unlucky countries that urbanized and thus crashed its birth rate before it could industrialize and thus become wealthy. Brazil's birth rate has crashed, and thus their economic prospects are dim for decades going forward, as they will struggle with an aging population. At the same time, their main market of Europe and the Far East are both projected to lose half their population over the next 60 plus years, meaning demand for their goods will crash. Brazil had a serious opportunity to invest in real assets and physical, actual things that would pay back their wealth in the early 2000s when they had that money, but that opportunity was completely wasted. Number 2, Russia. I really like the comparison of Russia and Brazil since they're countries that are in many ways very similar. Both are massive Western adjacent countries with some of the highest inequality rates, run by oligarchs, are corrupt and economically based off exporting a couple resources, and are projected for dark times due to population decline. 150 years ago, you could have projected where Brazil is today, since it would be doing the exact same thing. However, Russia is a much more sad story with clear lost potential. As I talk about in this video, Russia has always been the country that has been so close to becoming a wealthy and fair place, and then makes the wrong call. Before World War I, Russia was rapidly industrializing, gaining income, and liberalizing. Russia was a massive cultural powerhouse, with a rapidly growing population was the terror of all its neighbors. Russia was on track to become the largest economy in the world. However, the Soviets seized power. Don't get me wrong, Russia massively grew in importance under the Soviets, with them conquering all of Central Europe and fully industrializing. But to be fair, every industrial country grew massively in the early 20th century, so that's not really special. However, the Soviets, especially under Stalin, gutted every social institution by wiping out the religion, successful peasant class, private business, universities, artists, independent military, the family, and by the time Stalin died, the only thing that still worked well in the Soviet Union was the secret police. Societies are living, breathing organisms, and the things mentioned above are what allowed them to prosper. Russia, in effect, committed suicide as a society by killing all of its effective social organisms, and instead became a herd corralled by guns and brainwashed from childhood. Russia has spent centuries building up social capital under the czars, which Stalin unwisely burnt. You can see this in just the human character of Russia, going from 7 children per family in World War I to having an unsustainable birth rate in the 1970s. The average lifespan in Russia collapsed due to mass alcoholism over the last couple decades. When the Soviet Union fell, Russia was a liberal democracy for a couple years and then became a dictatorship run by the secret police, who were the only functioning organism.
Yo, this is so sad, dudes, because if you guys actually like read on some of the Russian history and stuff, like Russia was on the way up, like they were out here, man. And then I think what pretty much set it off pretty badly was basically Russia losing so much to what was his name, Napoleon, and that's what really sort of kept this cascade sort of down and stuff. And then eventually getting rid of the Tsar, and then you had this whole communist outbreak and stuff like that, and then just a lot of bullshit going down. And then from there, like losing World War in World War I and stuff, there's a huge amount of losses that happened there. Oh my god, just a lot of bad things that end up happening. But this is pretty sad because this country could have definitely done very well, and if just certain things in history didn't pan out, and went the other direction, we could have had a much different story. But dang, this country just takes a lot of L's, man.
With Putin being former secret police under the Soviets, and who has de facto run Russia for my entire life. Putin was able to stabilize Russia from the post-Soviet chaos and remains popular from this, but has also strangled the country of its possible potential. In classic Russian fashion, Putin cares more about maintaining power than the quality of life, and rules through oligarchs who purchase the old Soviet state corporations, who he uses to stabilize control of the society, which is in effect deviating back to the pre-18th century status quo, where the monarchy worked with the nobility to control the society. Russia is an incredibly unequal country where the elite live in insane luxury, while the society works for no one else. Russia has no industrial competitiveness, and its industrial base is useless, being built off the Soviets. Russia briefly looked good for the reason Brazil did, due to high resource prices in the early 2000s. In Russia's case, this was agriculture and natural gas. However, I also don't understand why people were bullish on this country. Its educated class was fleeing en masse to the West. Its elite trusts it so little that there are more Russian rubles outside Russia, sitting in bank accounts in Britain, Panama, or Cyprus than inside the nation of Russia. It lacks the preconditions for economic growth like rule of law. Like Brazil, if you looked for a second anything besides resource prices, you would see this. In fact, the Russians were very happy to become part of the BRICS because it would allow them to associate with the other countries that were experiencing economic growth, while Russia was not in the same category. There are some things where you should give the Russians credit. They were able to stabilize and keep their standard of living pretty good after the economic crash, unlike many of the other countries on this list. And the cost of living is not that high in Russia. At the same time, they've recently been able to stabilize their birth rate, but nowhere near to the degree that won't cause their end over the next few years. Again, like Brazil, Russia's economy crashed in 2014 due to resource price collapse, immediately followed by Russia's invasion of Crimea, which further hurt its economic prospects. Putin did this to unify his country during the recession, blacklisted by the rest of the world due to the first war in Crimea, and 7 years later this was completed with the invasion of Ukraine. Russia is now almost completely isolated from the world's economy, which will likely cause a crisis due to natural gas and agricultural reliance on Russia, as I talk about in this video. Russia is also in a very ugly position now with its demographics. Russia's population is slated to halve over the next 60 years. A country like this cannot survive with two 70-year-olds for every 25-year-old. Russia's staring down civil war, state collapse, and all that over the next couple decades. Number 3, India. Interestingly, of every country on this list, India has the best future ahead of it, which is probably not what anyone expected at the start of this century. However, in their classic fashion, India always plays the moderate political and economic path, steering away from the very high growth of earlier in this century, but also not facing the
Interesting. Let's see. Examples of India being an exception to the rules: not having a large bureaucracy of empires, remaining polytheistic, having multiple sort of religions, basically, keeping its tribal structure from 4,000 years ago. Okay. Never attacking its neighbors. So that's cool. Having a massive population, but basically no giant wars or atrocities. Nice. Never being conquered by the Mongols. Shout out to my boys. Never having totalitarianism. That's G. Priest class dominating the society. We'll see. The caste system, I don't know if the caste system is that great, but it just is what it is, I guess. Political motivation through religion in the 1900s. Let's see. Successfully well-run democracy, communism. Asymmetric family structure, that's good. I would say probably number 11, that's really good. Having a good family structure, having hunter-gatherer until today. Only break without collapsing demographics. So basically, good family structure and demography not being destroyed. Probably the 14 and 11 being the most important, why it's still probably kicking and shit. And then not being conquered by the Mongols. That's pretty hilarious.
The issues that we're having now. As they are the only country on this list without a major crisis staring them down, India again fulfills the rule I've posited of always being the country that's the exception to every rule. I was thinking about what witty quip I could make up for India's history like I did for Brazil and Russia, but fuck it. I spent an hour trying to explain Indian civilization, and I only feel like I cracked the surface. India is easily the most complicated country in the world, with hundreds of gods, castes, languages, ethnicities, and more. India was a chaotic civilization that skipped out on the axial age level.
Jesus Christ, look at that map, man. That is insane, dude. Wow. Dang, dude. Are these the tribes or just the certain areas, man? That's insane, dude. Holy snap.
Package of monotheism and bureaucratic empires, thus keeping the insane degree of complexity that the Bronze Age world had into the 21st century, while then being horrifically pwned by the Muslims and the British, who left them with the scaffolding of a modern democracy, bureaucracy, and science, with Gandhi providing the new spirit for the new republic. India went through a socialist phase in the Cold War era as a reaction to British hyper-capitalism, which caused tens of millions of death and famine. India remained deeply poor and was slated for mass famine, but with the invention of GMOs and the introduction of capitalism in the late 20th century, India was looking to be in pretty good shape at the start of this century. My researcher Seamus did a project on the Indian economy today, or what the fruits of modernization have been, and the results are really unique. Tropical countries like Brazil earlier tend to have incomprehensible bureaucracies that make mass coordination impossible, and this is what happened with India. Thus, India's actual industry has not grown at all in the last 40 years. Unlike the previous two countries, India
That's crazy that you're manufacturing as the Indian, like it hasn't grown in 40 years, so it's like pretty much stayed stagnant. Jesus Christ. DCC, who's the new Gandhi? I don't know, man. I don't know. Yikes, man. My ex was an immigrant from India. She was an orphan over there. After that map, she never had a chance of knowing her background. Dang, that's crazy. That's insane. But my God, man. Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, this is terrible. But this is kind of one of the reasons why the United States works so well is because now this is pretty fucked to say, but it's true and stuff. Basically, because there was a lot of open territory there. Obviously, they did a lot of atrocities to the Indians. So I'm not saying that and stuff, but Indians here in the United States, not in India. That was the British. But basically, because it was able to get all conquered and stuff, and the tribes were out of the way and stuff like that. Terrible thing to say, but it's just trying to say it. But like you're able to establish all these kind of rules and boundaries and stuff like that, and then allowed the United States not to have that much of a problem and stuff. So it's kind of crazy, man. And on top of that, with no natural enemies as well.
Does have rule of law, but its bureaucracy is so incomprehensible as to make big projects impossible. India's growth has been concentrated in services and its upper classes. This makes sense considering India's at least 5,000-year history of the caste system, which prioritizes the upper classes. India has really advanced technological sectors, service industries with despised call centers being an example, and all of that sort of thing. Strangely enough, for a process called industrialization, India has not seen a lot of industry and is being led by soft service industries. The report shows a disturbing picture of a two-tiered Indian society. As the movie The White Tiger, which is really fun to watch, says, those with bellies and those without. Most people in India, like almost all countries today, have not seen their standard of living improve at all in the last 40 years. In fact, mechanization stands to destroy India's peasant classes, without new factories arising to provide them jobs in the cities. And educational standards in Indian public schools have not improved at all in the last 40 years. India has all the preconditions of a severe social crisis that Turchin uses to predict revolutions and civil wars. This includes elite overpopulation or having lots of educated Indians unable to gain better jobs due to the top 0.1% getting more and more wealth. When elite aspirants can't get positions, you should be very worried since they get radicalized, start political crises, or flood my comment section with unhinged Indian nationalist comments. My favorite author, Amaury Duriancourt, wrote in the 60s that India was the country best positioned for fascism in the next century, and I agree with the Hindu nationalist BJP being a weak representation of this impulse. India is remarkably self-contained for a country of its massive scale of over 1 billion. It's self-sufficient for food, which is incredibly impressive, but it also barely trades with any of its neighbors and exercises basically negative foreign policy influence. Every single country neighboring India is a Chinese ally, with Bangladesh and Pakistan slated for Chinese naval bases. The Chinese are literally trying to dam up the water supply for northeast India or the Brahmaputra River. However, none of that's actually that bad, and of all the countries on this list, even if India has a civil war or becomes a
I don't know if it's not that bad. Damming a lot of water away from India, I don't think that's great. But I kind of get what he's saying right now. Is basically India is so used to being in the shitter that like it's gonna survive. Where like if there is a famine, like India's going to make it and stuff like that, and like the overall government structure is gonna survive. Versus where in China, if there's a famine, they're pretty fucked basically.
for northeast India or the Brahmaputra River. However, none of that's actually that bad, and of all the countries on this list, even if India has a civil war or becomes a fascist dictatorship, it's still the best positioned country here. It's the only one which is not having a major demographic crisis and will never have a resource or industrial crisis. India has never, ever been a great power, with Indian armies never attacking outwards once in the country's 4,000-year history. India's poor have always been poor and downtrodden and have no real expectations of anything else, meaning India can shove off and deal with major crises without breaking its social structure. Number 4, China.
That was some dark shit on India the last second, man. Holy crap. These people have been so poor that poorness doesn't affect them anymore. Poorness is like forever. Like, what the fuck, man? That's horrible.
I've already covered China in this video, and so I'm going to keep this one short. China is in the past by far the most impressive of the BRICS, being a literal economic majority of the entire BRICS net worth. And if you remove India, it has 3 times more people than all those other BRICS combined. If you want to judge off the historic record as well, China's an optimistic bet, being the largest economy and country in the world for almost all of human history. And China's economic growth over the last 40 years is the largest ever in all of human history. In 1976, China had a smaller economy than Spain, and is now by some metrics the largest in the world, surpassing even the United States. However, at the same time, China is experiencing what will become a massive dynastic and social collapse, which will consume them for decades, killing hundreds of millions. That's big talk, but let me show you why I think that. China has very strong fundamentals. It's 94% the same ethnicity, it's in the temperate zone, and its people are naturally educated, loyal, entrepreneurial, and hardworking. In any given profession, there is probably some part of China that is in competition to be the best area in the world at that thing, in the same way the US can do. The Communist Party liberalized in the late 20th century, and China is largely growing by importing Western industry. I remember looking at my toys and seeing all of them were made in China, and thus assuming China must be a great country. For the longest time, China was the country that made everything, although in recent years a combination of Southeast Asia and the US have been surpassing them. The Chinese were growing at an unbelievable rate, spawning technical sectors, truly massive cities, and all of that at a speed that no one could believe. Everyone thought the Chinese would take over the world, and it looked like this as well. China became a massive soft powerhouse, becoming the main influencer in most of Africa, Asia, and even parts of Latin America. The Chinese resurrected the Mongol Empire as an alliance against the American world order. In order to understand where the Chinese went wrong from this high point, we need to
resurrected the Mongol Empire and fucking failed, son. Failed. That's right. Failure, man. And yeah, man, they went wrong with the one-child policy. I mean, there's just so many things. It's just because they did not care for human life at all. I mean, at one point, I think Mao was offering, what was it? I think it was President Nixon. He was offering President Nixon, like, hey, man, shit. Hey, I'll send you, like, we have so much people here in the shit. Like, I need to get rid of some of these women. I'll send you 10 million women. I'll just ship them to the United States for you. I mean, we don't need them here. Like that's one of the problem with communism and all this stuff is just the massive disrespect for humanity, and dudes. It's pretty terrible and stuff like that. I'm just telling you, man. I mean, obviously there's always a lack of disrespect, always as big governments and stuff like that. But like, truly, there's like a lack of caring, especially when a country gets that gigantic. I think the United States, no matter what, when you have that big of a population, a billion people, you will tend to kind of fuck things up a little bit with people. But that is crazy. I mean, like, Indian society with a billion people as well as Chinese society, like, it's sort of that whole like Stalin thing, one death's a tragedy, a million deaths just a statistic. It's pretty crazy, man.
To look at the pre-existing example of Japan, which I'm surprised no one's looked to. Japan in the 60s through 80s was an economic titan. Japan was a massive technological and economic powerhouse, with Japan being an incredibly wealthy country and even buying up large parts of the American economy like the Chinese have. Crazy as it sounds, for a long period of time, Japan was the second biggest economy in the world. People were talking about Japan as the next great power. However, in 1991, the Japanese real estate market bubbled and fell apart, and the Japanese economy has scarcely grown an inch in the 30 years since. What went wrong? Japan followed the two same errors of China. The first is that its elite was too coherent and thus didn't have enough dissent. The Japanese printed a ludicrous amount of money to fund their economic growth, with coercion between the banks, government, and corporations. When this financial scheme stopped working, as all bubbles do, they were toast and they ran out of gas. China is the exact same today, but it's
also, just add one more thing too, as well, as and then their demographics started. They were just not having enough kids, man. So I don't know, man. I mean, personally, the way I would do it, and the way I'd change Japan, I would make it a concerted effort within the Japanese. How could I do it? I mean, obviously, I'd put tax incentives and stuff to have families. I would force the Japanese anime industry to show characters having kids and all this stuff. And like, I mean, you literally just have to propaganda the shit into for people having to have kids and stuff I mean, it would just be, I mean, shit, if I ever run for president, I'm doing that shit. I mean, I'm just massive amount of money into that stuff, because you have to keep supporting the Ponzi, regardless or not. You need the next generation to be bigger than the last generation, or at the very least replacement levels. It's crazy. And yeah, they're giving houses away, but in like kind of like out of nowhere in the middle of the country and stuff like that. I mean, they just have to build out infrastructure out there, but that's kind of what's going on. But it's kind of funny. I mean, probably because like their roots is in Asia and stuff like that. I mean, like, Japanese people come from China originally. Then I think there was a land. I can't remember if there was a land bridge or something like that. But they immigrated. They left China, went to Japan, and then built their own society from there and stuff like that. Even their like alphabet and everything comes from, it's like a Chinese alphabet, and they changed it up and stuff, but it just is what it is.
Corporations. When this financial scheme stopped working, as all bubbles do, they were toast and they ran out of gas. China is the exact same today, but it's much worse. The Chinese money printing is by far the largest and most outrageous ever in the course of human history. You can even see the results with the incredibly overinflated Japanese and Chinese real estate markets before their crashes. Speaking of gas, Confucian countries have similar demographic structures over time. They concentrate their population growths over a single hyperpower generation, and then don't have any children after that. The Japanese had lots of young people until 1990, when they started to age and their economy went bust. The reason the Japanese never recovered is that they just didn't have enough young people. China is in the exact same condition, but again worse. In many ways, it's useful to view the Chinese-Japanese relationship like that being the United States and Britain, where the same trends as manifested in Britain manifest in the US to a much larger degree, and because those trends are happening in such a larger arena, they can become like a black hole or vortex just due to the scale difference. China has a giant bracket of people in their late 30s and not really any group younger than that. This demographic in their late 30s or early 40s has no children, can't afford to retire or get a home. Their bodies also can't keep up with the 12-hour shifts in China that are common. As this demographic ages without a future, China's just screwed. China's birth rate at this point is literally a quarter of what it would need to be stable. China's population will halve over the next 60 years, thus resulting in the collapse of their society. At the same time, China's manufacturing relationship with America, which underlaid 42% of its economy, was broken starting with the Trump administration. The US started a tariff war with China, followed by a collapse in relations and China's alienation of the Western world, which is half of the world's economy, let I remind you. China has lost industrial competitivity, with lower value production going to cheaper Southeast Asian countries as Chinese workers ask for higher wages, while the more complex stuff going back to the United States, which experienced one of the most rapid reindustrializations ever. China then started down the road of totalitarianism, with Xi assuming more and more dictatorial power. China started threatening war with India and America on a regular basis. China had brutal lockdowns that resulted in destroying internal trade, promulgating mass famine, stopped foreign trade, foreign education, ushering in a supposed new era of Maoism. China is now experiencing the largest riots ever since Tiananmen Square. China's economy is completely unsustainable, with a incredibly ludicrously overblown housing sector where normal Chinese will work 20 years to get a four-sided concrete shack without water, electricity, or heating. China has lots of bizarre, corrupt practices that seem out of the 17th century, like forbidding internal immigration. Local governments can only raise taxes through real estate.
God damn, bro. I don't have to say shit. My boy's just cock slapping China right now. She, damn, son. He is just, it's just with facts, my ninjas. Jesus, man. But also another one problem with the real estate market as well is they, just to bring it back to the red pill a little bit. I mean, they linked the social sexual hierarchy with real estate, and basically because they had so much, because the one child policy, they just aborted or just killed a lot of females in the society. You have a lack of females, so it ends up making them females a lot stronger in society. So men are competing in order to get females to marry them, right? So it ended up pushing this whole thing where they push Chinese society and to have these bullshit properties in order to show like, oh, my son, he owns 2 bullshit properties versus your son only owns 1. My son's a much better fit. Yeah, you're right. Let's marry him off over to this one because he has 2 bullshit properties. Jesus. Yeah, man. Now, not saying all that. I'm not saying all that now. That is like it's over here perfect and stuff, but it isn't as bad as like the Chinese system and stuff like that. Like replacement wise, millennials were a larger population than the boomers. I think by 5 or 7% last time I looked. So we're replacement and stuff like that, and then we have the other adjoining populations and stuff, which are the Zoomers, and then the Generation Alpha being born right now. We've had about officially like 3 years of kids being born to Generation Alpha, which are, I think at the oldest right now, they're about 2 years old, 2.5 years old right now. So pretty interesting stuff going on in the world.
Education, ushering in a supposed new era of Maoism. China is now experiencing the largest riots ever since Tiananmen Square. China's economy is completely unsustainable, with a incredibly ludicrously overblown housing sector where normal Chinese will work 20 years to get a four-sided concrete shack without water, electricity, or heating. China has lots of bizarre, corrupt practices that seem out of the 17th century, like forbidding internal immigration. Local governments can only raise taxes through real estate. The military has its own factories and farms, or selling military and political offices. Inequality is higher than any of the Western capitalist countries, and workers have less rights, which is ironic for a supposedly communist nation. There is a lot of reason for revolution in China. China has a hard road ahead. Number 5, South Africa. South Africa was jotted on after the BRICS were already formed. I think this was out of convenience, since you can just add an S easily to make it a plural, and people also probably felt racist for not having an African country. Likewise, there's always been a big squad of people bullish on Africa, and South Africa was symbolic at that time for that crew of people. People also like Mandela, who I think is objectively a great man, and wanted to act as if his project was still working. None of that made it a good decision, though. South Africa is not a real country. It was a tool of European colonialism, with the unifying factor being the white ruling class. The country is split racially east-west, and there are many sub-nations in South Africa that are better served as independent or even joining their co-ethnics in neighboring countries. Once that white ruling class lost power in South Africa, the country really had no reason to exist. Apartheid ended much better than anyone involved expected. Instead of the horrifying race war most people predicted, the Black Africans had a great and moral leader of Mandela, who whites were willing to peacefully hand power over to. Once South Africa became a full suffrage democracy, the whites, who now stand at 7% of the population, lost electoral power, while remaining wealthy and the main economic drivers. The biggest problem in South Africa is the coexistence of an industrial European civilization inhabiting the same region as an African that could have existed for the birth of Christ. The differences in education, attitude, and everything else is thousands of years. Due to this, South Africa has the highest inequality and crime rate of any nation on Earth. It is some incredibly heartbreaking and rending poverty. The ruling party, the ANC, or African National Congress, has maintained power by pulling on its rural poor supporters and bases its right to rule off giving goodies to its constituencies. It's already started repossessing the white ruling class's farmlands to small black farmers, and its campaign promises are to finish this promise. For a frame.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm not with him with the whole Mandela. It's great shit either and stuff like that, but he makes some great points, not on that, but on other things he does. And the other thing too, as well, he is a young kid as well. Like, I think this guy's not even 24 years old, but it's still a good video and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, this was what I'm saying. Like, every country does some fuck shit, dude. This genocide, I mean, it's bad. Like, it's like, if you really look into every country, like, has blood on their hands. It's pretty terrible. It's really terrible, man. But yeah, pretty shithole of a country, basically. Yeah, for the most part.
Frame of reference of when this happened in Zimbabwe, it resulted in turning the country from a breadbasket to one where large parts of the population were starving and the currency was hyperinflated, so they had dollar bills numbering in the trillions. South Africa under apartheid was economically insulated from the rest of the world, and none of its industries are competitive. South Africa really has nothing going for it except for resources like diamonds. The problem with economic growth in Africa is the absence of preconditions like rule of law, education, a history of a work ethic, linear time, and strong clans. For an example of this, South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, took $30 million in taxpayer funds to renovate his mansion. He also raped an activist against him, and when she told him she had AIDS, he said he took a shower and washed it off. South Africa's social...
Wait, what? 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 Yo, what? Yo, did I hear that correctly? Hold up. What the? This boy wildin', dude. What the fuck?
Example of this, South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, took $30 million in taxpayer funds to renovate his mansion. He also raped an activist against him, and when she told him she had AIDS, he said he took a shower and washed it off.
I'm speechless, bro. I'm speechless on that. Wow, dude. I just took a shower. I'm cool.
South Africa's social problems, including drought, rural overpopulation, and poverty, are horrifying. South Africa won't survive as a unified country in the next 30 years, let alone be Africa's future titan. This was the worst call of any in the BRICS. There are a couple of things we should learn from the story of the BRICS. The first is that you have to ignore hype. With everything from the trans movement to NFTs or modern monetary theory, our age likes to paint what's clearly a cow as a horse, and then be completely shocked when you try to ride the cow like a horse and then fail. If you read a single book on most of these countries' histories, you could see what their fundamental problems would be in calling them the power of the future or good long-term investments. However, like so many other things, investors bought into the hype and them doing very well for only a couple years. A theme I will bring up a lot on this show is try to just use common sense and not let yourself be confused by people who look smart or the hype. Also, the interesting thing is that there were countries that were overlooked that have relatively bright futures. In fact, for each of the failed BRICS, there's an alternative that was actually sustainable. Brazil failed, but Mexico became an industrial powerhouse, and Colombia pulled its shit together. Russia didn't do so great, but East Central European countries like Poland, the Baltics, Czechia, Hungary, and Romania experienced downright stunning economic growth, now being fully developed economies. Loads of businesses relocated from China to Southeast Asia, with many people saying Vietnam feels like China did 10 years ago. When South Africa failed, Ethiopia was able to industrialize, and Kenya became the economic center of all East Africa. To use a cliche example from fairy tales, don't miss the gem in the mud for the flashy option that looks good but won't go the distance. The nations and people in general that succeed over the long haul, rather than just having some luck they'll burn, or those that save, work hard, act fairly, and all those other things we intuitively know to be good principles. All the BRICS looked attractive since they had insane growth for that very second, often due to taking shortcuts that would screw them over in the long term, while those countries mentioned before didn't, thus setting them up for slower but more real and durable growth. On a statistical basis, a country that experiences extremely fast growth over a short period is also very likely to have a horrifying economic crash afterwards. Finally, the ultimate joke is that the previous country, which the narrative said was in decline, ended up beating all the rivals. The United States remains preeminent in every field, experiencing rapid reindustrialization, while it has the healthiest demographic future of any developed country. In the modern world, we always forget constants and think the entire universe can be turned upside down in an instant. However, if a country has been successful for centuries and others have failed for centuries, there's normally a long-standing reason for that, which will not change in a matter of a single decade. The Wheel of History.
And there you go, man. That was a pretty cool video, man. And it just kind of shows you just like the kind of the just is what it is, man. It just anytime I mean, we really got to be looking with Scooby Doo eyes or some shit, or like skeptical hippo eyes. Anytime you see the media going like, this country is a country of the future, they're going to take over the world, man. The United States is going to get toppled over or whatever and stuff like. You know, it feels it's just like a honey dicking in order to get your dollars over there and stuff. Like, for the most part, I've never truly understood as an American, not as a person in other place, but as an American, why you would, for the most part, go invest into foreign national companies unless you really knew that space and stuff. It seemed like a really stupid idea for the most part. Now, I'm not saying like you can invest in some major companies that you understand really well, but most people don't really understand a lot of like other countries. So. And honestly, there's a case to be made that a lot of the companies that you invest here in the States are multinational anyway. You buy fucking PepsiCo or you buy a Coca-Cola, it pretty much just stand around the world and stuff. So America, USA, that's how it works, man. And just to end the stream right here, man, I sleep with a jar of gypsy tears. Now I no longer have the AIDS. Only on dollar cost crypto can that happen right there, man. But hey, thank you so much for joining me, you guys, today. Tomorrow we'll be having Moon Gang at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yeah, man, go join the Citadel. I will be back on here. I think I will actually do a stream on Monday because I will be traveling all day on Tuesday and stuff back to the United States and stuff. Puerto Rico is a cool country, man. Shout out to Puerto Rico. I think I see a lot of development here, but there's also a lot of like poverty, but we're starting to get a lot of real estate development here in Puerto Rico, what I'm noticing and stuff, because when I was here about a year and a half ago, it looked a lot shittier. And there's the country. I went to Puerto Rico at probably the worst time to ever go to Puerto Rico. It was blazing hot. And as well as that, they were being full on COVID Nazis. You couldn't go anywhere. Like, I mean, you had to get a PVC test the minute you got into the country. Like, I mean, it was insane. Like, masks everywhere. You couldn't go to a restaurant without showing your card or whatever, or you had to get a test every 24 freaking hours. Terrible. Now, experiencing it all open and stuff, it seems pretty cool and stuff. Like, great food. Chicks look great and stuff like that. If you're into that, I don't know about the guy side, so that's on you, broskies. But yeah, man, it's a really cool sort of thing. So definitely, top off the hex bag, buy some Ethereum, buy some crypto, save up some dry powder, because if we do get a little bit of a downturn, we'll be able to buy some decent prices on these crypto things, and then we're off to the races again. So with that, peace, and check you guys later.
Didn't have to cut me off. Like that we were nothing.